Hi guys, today I'd like to take a bit of time to talk about the game Cyberpunk 2077 and role-playing, as obviously this game is based on the Cyberpunk RPG from Art Azorian Games. And okay, I'm a little late coming to a commentary about this game, but I've not made a secret in past videos that I seem to be one of the few who is a fan of the game. So let's first address the elephant in the room. Cyberpunk 2077 probably wasn't ready for release when I got it on release day, but I never witnessed any game-breaking bugs when I played it. And although the game was filled with glitches, none of those really bothered me. What did bother me, however, was the immersion-breaking bugs. For example, near the beginning of the game, you emerge from the tower block where you live to meet with a close contact. So I wandered through the building and out down the steps into the city, towards where I was supposed to meet with him. The tone felt right. It was early in the morning in a city. People were rushing to their jobs and grabbing breakfast from food stalls around the entrance to the building. Police were patrolling through the crowd, and the NPCs were chatting away, leaning on railings, and talking with one another as they strolled along. When there was a sudden enormous crash, and then an explosion, tables, chairs and bodies went flying everywhere. Although I'm familiar with the world of Cyberpunk in the year 2020, but the game is set in 2077, so we're 57 years later, so things could well radically be different. So I begin trying to work out what's happened. My first thought is that perhaps there are terrorists in the city, and this will prove to drive the story forward. After all, the programmers wouldn't put this event in front of me as I first emerge into the open world city unless it was important. After looking around, it becomes apparent. This was just actually a bug. A car spawned into the centre of the street-side restaurant instead of in the street itself, with NPCs, tables and chairs all suddenly inside the car. The physics model went a little crazy, and the car went through dozens of impacts simultaneously. Its bodywork exploded off to simulate the damage it would be receiving in such an impact, and those pieces impacted with everything around it, with the car itself exploding from all this damage. And as NPCs stood up and restarted their activity, I discovered door panels, seats and other evidence of the remains of the car, and realised that it was just a bug all along, and was totally thrown out of immersion in the game, the immersion that the game had generated oh so well just immediately before. Shortly afterwards, I'm running down the street and I turn a corner and discover all of the NPCs are standing perfectly still in the next street. There's obviously some kind of police bust going on. A police car is sitting with its lights flashing and its doors still wide. Policemen with their guns drawn are standing around another NPC, all frozen in place along with everyone else in that street. So suddenly I start devoting precious brainpower to working out what's happened within the reality of the game world. Is there some kind of freeze or stasis bomb? Has a bad guy set it off so he could slip away from the police? Nope, it's another glitch, and after a few moments the street scene continues as normal, again throwing me out of the immersion the game otherwise created oh so well. And I have to mention a minor Matrix-like moments whenever I was running down the streets. As NPCs despawned behind me, they'd be respawned in front of me, so I'd keep running past the same people again and again, which gave the illusion that there were only a few character models, which just isn't true. There are many thousands. Or perhaps that I was in the Matrix and I should be seeing that girl in the red dress trying to distract me. But all of these are fixed now, as are some other annoying design choices, such as the police spawning incredibly close to the player, so you can literally stand on the spot, turning back and forth and killing cops, who instantly spawn in standing right behind you, as the game seemed to think as long as you didn't see them appear, you'd never realise they were just teleporting in, rather than running up from along the street. Cops, who I must note, still never give chase in a car. They'll arrive by car, get out and shoot at you, but then allow you to speed away without ever getting back in. Now, what I really wanted to talk about was the way the game incited me to actually roleplay due to the immersion of the world, which mainly happened despite the game itself. For example, clothing in the game is stupid. For a start, you're limited in what you can wear, not only by your stats, which would be kind of understandable. After all, you can't run around in full heavy riot armour if you're physically very weak. But it's also limited by your level and reputation. So you literally can find a pair of cool looking shoes, which you need the stats to wear, you need to be high enough level to wear, but you also need to have people think you're cool enough and competent enough to wear. The word on the street is that those shoes don't go with those trousers, you just can't carry it off. Also, the stats of clothing have nothing to do with its appearance, so that a miniskirt can have higher armour ratings than those of a pair of armoured combat pants. So until I learned the crafting system, my street kid sniper tended to wear a pair of pink hot pants, as nothing else I could find or buy could beat their ratings. And while it's a common joke about video games that your character will wear incredibly mismatched items of armour, In Cyberpunk, where fashion should play a massive part in creating your character, this seems like a huge flaw, that you need to take massive disadvantages to choose a unified style, rather than ending up dressing from whatever you've scavenged off the corpses of your dead opponents. But clothes actually have no influence at all on gameplay other than combat. So wandering into a business meeting in your bright pink hot pants, tuxedo jacket, combat helmet and thigh-high boots has no effect on gameplay, and neither does wearing a business suit to meet with a heavily cybered street gang. But that didn't stop me. Once I'd got myself a variety of clothing, when I was off to meet the prospective mayor, I'd be smartening myself up, and grunging myself down when I was on the streets. Without forcing itself on me, the world felt immersive enough that I wanted my character to look the part, as I felt the NPCs would disapprove. I wanted to stroll into a business meeting looking sharp and professional, just as I wanted to look dangerous and ready for action on the streets. Now don't get me wrong, the game really could do with some systems in place to enforce some social norms, as I don't think the game even cares if you wander around stark naked, showing off everything that the character designer allows you to select in such loving detail. And while I'm having a moan, the fact that the player's wardrobe is so limited compared to that of the NPCs is annoying. They obviously modelled all of the clothing, as it's right there in the game, but for some reason you can see something you'd really like your character to wear to complete their look. But nope, the programmers have decided, we're not allowing that. Now, for all of its flaws, I do find that the world that Cyberpunk 2077 creates to be one of the most compelling that I've ever played. The map is just so filled with events and places that I want to explore. For example, when wandering the world on the way to a mission, I noticed a cafe, so I decided to explore and see what was for sale. I'm in the middle of a dialogue with the guy behind the counter, when a gang bursts in to rob the place, and suddenly I've got the opportunity to act as a seasoned professional mercenary and talk them out of their petty crime. Or I could just pull a gun and start blasting. But it just makes you feel like there's so much of a full world out there to explore. I know from watching YouTube that there's totally different things like this to discover, which don't appear to every player on every playthrough. All of this means that I'm only too willing to explore this world, to see what's around the corner, what missions open up when I'm willing to wait. Late on in the game, there's missions which open up even after you're ready to complete the game. And there's one entire series of missions with a death row inmate, which only occur if you deliberately fail an assassination mission on him. Compared to Grand Theft Auto 5, for example, Cyberpunk was a world I wanted to play in, rather than just a game I wanted to play. GTA 5 was fun, but I only wanted to play the main story, rather than find out what other stories were out there. That's not to say some of the game elements of Cyberpunk aren't a bit of a disaster. The level system, which I mentioned before in regard to clothing and armour, also is terrible in regard to weapons. The average shotgun you pick up off the street will do 60 points or so of damage, but by the late game you're dealing with bad guys who have thousands of hit points. Fortunately, by that point you've got access to upgraded weapons, which can do, with the right choices, tens of thousands of points of damage. My personal favourite, similar to most FPS games I play, is one particular sniper rifle, which can shoot through walls for thousands of points of damage. Aligned with the right abilities, I can see opponents anywhere within a building, and snipe them through the walls silently before I even enter, which just feels cool, even if I must accept it's totally overpowered. But the fact that you can pick up a shotgun off the streets and shoot some NPCs in the face with it, for blast after blast, and barely hurt them, really makes it feel like a video game. I must compliment the map in the game, which is also so expansive. When you're in the middle of the city, it really does feel like a massive city, and enough of the buildings can be entered and explored, they just don't feel like they're building appearing obstacles to navigate around. Then there's the oil fields to the south, the desert to the east, solar farms, greenhouse complexes to feed the city. It feels real and massive, and worth exploring on foot and using a vehicle, so you'll discover all of the sights and missions which can only be found when you get near enough to them. And that's perhaps the biggest selling point of Cyberpunk for me. How much the world is one I want to spend time in. How much fun I have just cruising the streets on my bike, finding new places, getting involved in fights and picking up missions. The randomness of the world, where in one place I can find a Russian spy bunker, and in another I can fight a gang and release some people they've smuggled into the country in a shipping container. This world feels big and full, that not everything revolves around you, with other things going on which you're not privy to. Perhaps the biggest praise I can give the game is its value for money. Although I paid full price for it, some 50 UK pounds, which is something I don't usually do, the amount of playtime I've had it has worked out well. The last few games I bought were a bunch of Star Wars games, Star Wars Squadrons, Battlefront 2 and Fallen Order, each of which I paid around £15 for. Now checking my Steam account, I played all of those for around 10 hours. Squadrons I only played for 8, Battlefront 2 for 15, but basically they work out at around £1.50 per hour of entertainment. So Cyberpunk 2077, therefore, to prove economical, would need to have a playtime of around 34 hours. But checking it out, apparently over the last 7 months, I managed to play it for 180 hours. Now don't get me wrong, 10 hours of playtime in a modern game is awful, especially as normally these games would retail for full price, so should definitely provide 60 to 80 hours of play in my opinion. But even compared to those standards, Cyberpunk is well over what I'd expect, so I'm extremely happy with what I got for my money. And given this to be DLC free of charge for the game, I definitely think that this is one of the best games I've bought for quite a few years. That said, I've just bought LX a week or so ago, and I'm absolutely loving it, but that's a story for another day, and quite a different subject. So, as always, thank you very very much for watching. Please like, subscribe and comment below, as it does me massive favours with the YouTube algorithm. But as always, most of all, you look after yourselves, and I'll catch you later. Bye now.